Okay, so let's take a quick look at WPF in Microsoft Visual Studio. So when I first start up Visual Studio, we get this start page, and in order to start my project, I want to go ahead and click New Project. Once that happens, I'm going to go up here to the Templates area, and then I'm going to go to Visual Basic. I'm going to scroll down, make sure I'm in Windows Desktop. From there, instead of using the Windows Form application, I'm going to go ahead and use the WPF application. I'm going to name the application and make sure you store it where it's supposed to be stored or where you intended to store it. Then I'm going to click OK. Now, when I name this application, name it your project name or whatever you're trying to do, or your app name, to make sure that you can recognize it when you go try to recover it or save it or transfer it to a USB. So I'm going to click OK. Once that happens, Windows loads up a design window, and it opens up the XAML window. So this is the main difference between Windows Forms and WPF. WPF has a design window, it has a XAML window, and it also has a code behind window. Whereas Windows Forms doesn't actually have a XAML window, because Windows Forms is rendered by the processor and not by the graphics card. The XAML and the WPF is rendered by the graphics card. So in the XAML we have the definition of the design, how the design will look. And then we have our logic in the back end. So it completely separates everything, which is the way most things are done. It's basically done exactly like a website. So a good example would be, I have this website here, this page here, right? This Google page, and let's say I go to some let's try the Deadpool site. Alright, so I'm at the Deadpool site, and there's these pictures and all this stuff going on. If I right click on this and I say view source, you can see I have all this HTML5 back here that's describing the structure of this site over here. If I were to, let's say, select this area right here, and I check underneath down here, I can see how all of this stuff here is selectable. So this portion right here represents another portion on the website. Let me see, right here, you get what I'm saying. I'm not going to search the whole thing, but there it is. So right here I have this whole body area selecting this whole website. I have this table area right here. I have this portion right here connected to something else over here. And as you can see, it has styles and all the other stuff that actually represents this website. That's exactly what XAML does. It gives you it's a text representation of the design over here. Now, as we already know, or as we should know, in Microsoft Visual Studio we have our tools over here, and if we don't see our tools, if it's not pinned, it'll be on one of these little tabs over here. So I can click that tab, and if I don't pin it, it'll go back. A lot of times I like having it pinned, so I'm going to go ahead and pin that. And over here to the right we have our Solutions Explorer, and this will give us it will show us all the files that we have in our project. Right now, here's my project name, and here's the solution. So there's a difference between the solution and the project. I can have many projects in one solution. A lot of times, though, I like to have one project per solution, but that's completely up to you. The reason why I like to do that, because I don't like things to get mixed up at all. Because you have classes and all sorts of things going on in here, and then more solutions just makes everything more confusing. It's not that big a deal to have one solution per project, which is what I like to do. So over here we have our main window, which is this window here, and if I click down, if I drill down there, I have my main window .xaml.vb. If I click here on that one, I have, and it's associated with the main window as we see here. I have my Windows VB here, which is my code behind, which is where everything is going to happen. So if I were to go here to my tools and I put a button here, and then I want to say, let's say text block, no, text box. Put a text box here. Now in XAML, when I do this, before in Windows Forms, what I had to do is I had to go over here and I had to change the name and that sort of stuff, which is still here. Go to my properties. It's just not called name, it's called content. So if I go to my properties here to this button, and then I go to the content and I have the button there, and I can change that to press. And as you can see here, it changes to press. But I can also double click in there and change it. So it allows me to double click on the button also to go to the back, as we did in Windows Forms. So you really gotta understand that there's two functions happening on this button. So if I double click inside of here, it'll send me to the back, which I do not want. I want to double click on the inside to be able to delete that text. So I have that, and I can change this label up here the same way. Now over here, I want to make sure that I name everything, because in WPF things don't get an automatic name like they did in Windows Forms. So if I select this text box and I go over here, you see it says no name there. So I want to say txt input. Now when I do that, I can go down here and notice it says over here name txt input. I can actually take that out, and as you can see, as I take that name out and I go back here, you notice now it says no name. So all of these are connected. I can change it here, or I can go down here and put name equals txt input. I want to get rid of that extra space. And now, oh, I'm sorry, this is the button. So the button has a content. So I want to select the text box here, and then I'm going to add the name element here. Txt input. There we go. So I can either edit everything down here, edit everything over here, or I can edit everything over here. Sometimes when you're doing a project, you may want to do one or the other, because there's sometimes an advantage of using XAML over using the design, and sometimes there's an advantage of using the properties over using the XAML, and sometimes there's an advantage of just doing everything on the back end. Now if you notice before, I double clicked this button, this one here, and when it double clicked before, it took me back here and it wrote this segment here. A lot of times that'll happen and you didn't mean it to happen. So if you delete it and you run your application, you will run into this error. So I'm not going to go there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my errors panel, which I'm going to place down here. I'm going to go there and I'm going to double click that, and I'm going to go to the code behind, and then I'm just going to take this line out because it's trying to handle that. It's trying to reference that. I'm going to take those two lines out. And I'm going to hit save. And now that will solve that problem. So when I run it now, I won't have a problem. So back here in the code behind, if I want to use some if statements, I can either put it in here, or I can create another procedure or function. So let's kind of talk a quick bit about procedures and functions. Again, procedures will do things, functions will return things, and the way you create a function in Visual Studio and VB.NET is you start off with the keyword function. I'm going to make this public function. I'm going to call this return let's say add to string. How about that? And then from there I'm going to say as a string. Now what this means is that whatever this does is going to return a string. So we'll put that it takes something, so we'll say input as string. So we have input as a string and it returns a string. Now the one thing that we said the difference between a function and a procedure is that it returns something. We see there's nothing being returned here, but a function absolutely has to have a return. So that's why we're having this error, this warning thing happening here. So I have to put return, and what do I want to return? I want to return this input when it's done. So right now I don't have anything for it to return. So what I'm going to say is whatever you put inside of here, I want to take input plus equals added. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to return this. So now I don't have the error anymore. Now what does this plus equal means? Well, inside of your documentation that you have up on the blackboard, it'll tell you this plus equals simply means input equals input plus this. So it's a shorthand way of saying all of this. So we want to go ahead and try to use this one as much as possible, but if you have to use this, it's exactly the same thing. So now what happened, this function will take in some input, it'll throw it here, it'll add this to it, and then it'll spit that input back out as a string. So let's use that. I want, when the button is clicked, I want it to take this input from the txt and it's going to add that there, and then what do I want to do? I'm holding Alt down and I'm dragging this to create another input, and I'm just going to change this input to output, txt output. So now I have my txt output that I'm able to use, Control S to save, when the button is clicked. So I'm going to say txt output dot text equals add to string, and what am I going to feed it? I'm going to feed it txt input dot text. So now we fed it txt input dot text. We fed add to string txt input dot text, and whatever txt input dot text gives me back, I'm putting it into the txt output. Now what does txt input give me back? It gives me a string, and what is that string? It's going to be the input after this has been added. So let's see if that works. Run. We have an error here. Let's see what the error is. We're going to go here. Again, it was that double clicking of the txt change. We don't want that. And here is another one. Txt change. We don't want that. So at least we learned how to fix that problem. And now I can go ahead and run it. Now I'm going to go here and put and then I'm going to click press, and if you see here at the bottom it says hello, this is some text, ... added. And so this is kind of just a connection between functions and procedures and how to add some data from one text box to another text box using a function to alter or mutate that information and bring it back into txt output.